Okay, we've got a clock. It says that streaming has started. And we got this thing over here, which is also working. Alrighty. Looks like we've got a bunch of people already in the chat. Let me get my things in order, as it were. Alright, and there we go. Good morning from where I am to where you are. It's a pretty gray morning today. There's really not any sun. It's very gray. Not super cold, so that's good. It's supposed to maybe be as high as 40 degrees Fahrenheit today, so that'll be nice and sort of weird for, Wisconsin in very early March. Yes, it's the 4th of March. You're correct, there is muttering, and now there's breakfast going on in the background as well. Just trying to get everything all set up here. Let's see here, what do we got? Hi from Oxford, England, Edinburgh, Miami, Greece, Netherlands, Poland, Mexico, Norway, snow-covered Alberta, Bulgaria, Kentucky. What else have we got? Upstate New York, Chicago, that's nearby. Caspian Clayson says, saw you on the Andy and Rem show. Didn't know that you were on other podcasts' videos. Yes, I do this every other Sunday, hence the name, the Every Other Sunday Show. And you can see that right there. And I have a video that I put up every Friday, which I've been doing for 2.5 years. Previous to that, I didn't do it every Friday. I did it kind of randomly, and just recently had my 5-year anniversary on the 27th of February, so earlier this week. So, cheers. But I like Andy and Rem a lot. I've been on their show before, and I've been on a lot of different podcasts recently, talking about the new app that we're working on at my day job. That's about connecting tabletop gamers. It's called Game 4. You've probably heard of it, hopefully. If not, you should check it out. I could even try to put a link in the description. I think I can, or not the description, whatever this is, the chat here. I think I can do that. And it doesn't have that. That should work out for you. All right. Ontario, North Wales. Let me see here. Sydney, represent. Paris, France. Essex, England. Milwaukee. Oh, there's Jesse Daniel. Saw him last weekend. I was with 2 of my other cohorts from work. I was at a small little convention in Manitowoc, Wisconsin called Fire and Ice. And it always takes place last weekend of February. So we had a booth there where we were talking about Game 4 and stuff like that. Estonia, Romania, Poland. Let's see here. What else have we got? Oklahoma, Washington State. The WA Productions says, right now I am batch painting orcs. Well, that makes sense. The WA Productions. If you were batch painting something else, that would be, a little weird. I mean, I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying, your name is basically, orcs personified, so it makes sense that you be batch painting orcs. Topeka, Kansas. What else have we got? Singapore, Fort Wayne, Indiana. Ash Trigg says, yes, I just sat down to paint and got the reminder that the show had started. First time catching it live from Birmingham, UK. Excellent. Glad to have you here. Got Madison, Wisconsin, Kenosha. Both of those are in my neck of the woods. We've got Philippines. Sunrise, Florida. I'm working on some bolt-action Brits this morning. Frankfurt, Columbus, Ohio. John Jay says, is it getting tiring yet promoting the app? Impressive how many interviews, podcasts you've done so far. I have I don't get tired talking, I guess. I don't know. You can talk to some people that know me and say, yeah, that's probably true. You don't get tired talking. That being said, there was a day a couple weeks ago, it wasn't last week, I think it was the week before, where, it was 2 Wednesdays ago, I did 4 podcasts in one day. So That was a little tiring, but not too bad. And as VJ Morph mentioned earlier in the chat, I did a live show with the Osshammer guys down in Australia, and I had to get up at 3:30 in the morning because they do their show at 8 o'clock at night, and so I had to get up at 3:30 in the morning so I could be on at 4. And but that was really cool. They were great guys. They really like that concept of the apps. I'm hoping that it's not too tiring for all of you, but I've been pushing it, and I'm hoping that everybody who's watching this or listening to this can also help the community out, and not just the wargaming community, but also board games, role-playing games, collectible card games, by telling your local store about it, telling your other gaming friends about it. If there's anyone ever says, man, I just have a hard time finding people to play Magic with, or I have a really hard time, I want to get into a new RPG, but I don't know anybody around here, just say, hey, there's this app, you might want to try that. That's what we're looking for. But like I said, it's been out less than 3 months yet, and we're going to a big trade show in Reno, Nevada, not this upcoming week, but the week after, called GAMA. It's the Game Manufacturers Association, which doesn't spell gamma at all, really, not at least in my mind. But yeah, it's their big annual trade show. So we're going to be going to that. We have a booth, and then the people walking the aisles basically are not gamers generally. They're actually store owners who can also be gamers, let's be perfectly honest. But yeah, so it'll be hopefully really good that we'll get to talk to a lot of these people and get them on board. We've had really great feedback so far. So anyway, it'll also be interesting to see what comes out of GAMA. Last year at GAMA, the Game Manufacturers Trade Show thing, that's when Games Workshop announced Shadespire Armageddon. So and the terrain that was associated with it, which was really cool. So it'll be interesting to see if they release, if they mention something out. Like, I mean, we can't assume necessarily that a company like them is going to necessarily every time do another, like, oh, well, we had to do a big release at every one of these, and we have to do a big release at every Adepticon or whatever, But last year, they did, they showed off, I think, pictures. I don't know if they had actual stuff in the booth, but they definitely showed off pictures of Shadow War Armageddon and the terrain. And then at Adepticon, that was when they first told everybody about Shadespire. So it'll be interesting to see the next two conventions that I end up going to, because it'll be GAMA. It'll be a week in Reno. I'll come back. I'll work 2 days, Monday, Tuesday, and then on Wednesday I'm at Adepticon. So it's going to be a busy March. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see what comes out from Games Workshop and other companies as well, because I think other companies are also starting to kind of follow suit, where they're trying to release big stuff during, like, Adepticon. I know Mantic has had a Kickstarter going on, usually launching during Adepticon for the last several years. And I think, I'm not sure about this, I think they might be releasing, I think they might be doing a Kickstarter for their terrain crate systems. Like, they've got 2 terrain crates you can buy currently from Mantic that are basically like scatter terrain, but they're sci-fi stuff. Well, I think the next Kickstarter is for the fantasy stuff. So it's all kinds of little, wooden chairs and wooden, bookshelves and the keg for the ale and all that kind of stuff, and things that you can scatter around in your fantasy terrain stuff. So I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that Kickstarter's, I know it's coming up soon, and it might be during Adepticon, but I'm not sure yet. I'll have to check with them. Jonathan Jocelyn says, what app are you talking about? It's imgame4.com. So the app is called Game4, but if you go to imgame4.com, you can find links to it in the Android or the Apple Store and download it. It is it's an app for connecting tabletop gamers to each other and to events and to stores. We've got nearly 6,000 stores worldwide that are available to find in the app. So yes, you got a lot of stuff going on there. J.E. Granberg says, getting more interested in Shadespire as a pick-up and play, especially since I don't get to play that often. Yeah, I think that Shadespire's got a great niche in that it is small and like, you don't have to paint a ton of miniatures. Like, if you buy the base box, there's 8 miniatures in there, and you don't have to even really paint them technically. I prefer it, but I think I have to sneeze. Excuse me. So you don't have to paint them because they come in colored plastics, so that at least they are, if you have the starter box and you want to play against each other, it's not gray versus gray. It's at least red versus blue in that situation. So, yeah, it's nice. Mr. Super Nintendo Chalmers says, "Always remember to clearly distinguish your water pot from your coffee mug." Yeah, no, yeah, that's definitely. I mean, I'm not currently painting, so I don't have that worry. But honestly, what I do to help that is that, like, when I paint downstairs, I use a plastic, like, disposable kind of like party cup, sort of, and I usually drink out of a can, like I normally have a can of soda or something like that. So I've never actually tried to drink my paint water, so that helps too. That being said, I'm kicking around the idea of maybe making, when I launch the t-shirt store, which is coming very soon. I'm very soon. I actually I ordered 3 t-shirts just because I wanted to see what the quality was like. I've received 2 of them. The third one I should be getting very soon, possibly Monday. So I will be announcing the t-shirt shop very soon. Anyway, another option that I have for printable stuff in that t-shirt shop, well, it's not just t-shirts, obviously, is also mugs. So I've thought about making a mug saying something like "do not drink" or something like that. So we'll see how it goes, but that's a concept I've got currently. But if you want a tip and you're tired of drinking your paint water, I would tell you to use very different cups, so that it's a lot easier for you to differentiate. I would also tell you to move your paint water like further away from where you would normally put your coffee or your soda or your tea or whatever, just because if you put them right next to each other, you're asking for trouble, obviously. What else have we got? Paul Noxie says, "Sorting out my Necromunda stuff. Really think GW should have included the Orlok gang cards in the models box instead of a separate purchase." Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I guess they put them in with the Orloks box because they were going to be selling the Orloks and they knew that they would be doing it down the road. Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of. I like the look of the Orloks. Honestly, I like the look of the Orloks better than the other ones. I'm not a big fan of the. I mean, the Goliaths and the Eschers are okay. I don't know. I like the Orloks better, and I don't know. I think that's one of the reasons I'm more interested in Shadow War than I am in Necromunda, is because I get to use regular models and. Yeah, I don't know. I just like the Shadow War rules. I mean, I know that the rules are very much similar, but I do like Shadow War a good deal more myself personally. Alex Williams says, "I'm currently putting a Seraphon start collecting box together in the hope that I see someone on Game 4 in my neck of the woods." Well, that's a good idea. I'm really hoping, and I'll talk about this in a bit, that we see a Seraphon warband for Shadespire. I think that would be really cool. 12 Neef says, "Working on terrain for Adepticon." Hey, 12 Neef. Yeah, I'm not taking any terrain with me, but I am planning on bringing some armies, so I'm not sure what yet. Probably Shadespire. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Well, I think I might need to bring both 40K and Age of Sigmar, but I'm not sure. I've got a couple different people who want to play and stuff, and we'll see what we'll do with that. Marcus says, copper coffee cup and a glass mug for paint. Yeah, I would think that you would feel the difference then, maybe. Or just even having like a handle versus not a handle. That might help too. I could see myself much more likely to put my paintbrush into the wrong thing than to drink the wrong thing. I could see that happening. Again, because I mainly drink out of cans when I'm painting, that's going to be impossible because I can't get the paintbrush down inside the little hole. I mean, not with that attitude, but probably not. So, yeah, that might be something to think about. Raider Nation says, "Will you be doing Shadespire battle reports in the new studio?" Yes, most likely I will. My wife and I were actually up in the new studio yesterday, and we were building furniture, sort of. I bought a workbench at Harbor Freight, and it's like completely kind of IKEA-fied, where it's completely flat-packed, like everything is in pieces. So we started putting it together because she enjoys to build furniture stuff, and so and it's also nice to have help. So we did that and realized that they had neglected to send us about 5 or 6 screws that we needed, or bolts, I mean. So we're going to stop at the hardware store right after this show and go, before we go to lunch at her parents' house, we're going to stop at the hardware store and get some more bolts and nuts and washers and stuff that didn't end up coming in the package, so that we can finish that up hopefully this afternoon. And then I'm going to start moving stuff in there. Currently there are 3 big plastic shelving units in there. There are 3 chairs, like tub chairs, that I got from a local department store for a really good, super good price on sale, and the big workbench thing. So I'll be doing a tour. I'll probably be doing a very early preliminary, not much in there tour for the Patreon folks early on, and then as it gets closer and closer to being finished, I'll probably do a big tour video or something like that on the channel. So we'll see how that works out. What else have we got? Jesse Daniel says, that reminds me I'm still working on my Adepticon armies. Well, that's probably a good idea. Torch says, I'm building the last of my Shadespire teams today. 3 dwarves to go. Cool. I picked up, and I'll be talking about it in a little bit, but I picked up the dwarfs and the Skaven for my local shop. So now that the idea is, what are the next ones that they're going to release? That's what I want to know, and possibly you do as well, since there's 309 of you watching right now. Or you're just, want to listen to something while you're painting and building, which is also fine. We're totally happy with that, and we like to help people go forward with that and to paint and to build. Apollo Syndrome says, watched one of your videos about that guy. Do that guy actually know that they are that guy, or do you think that that guy actually knows that they are that guy, or do you think do they think they are doing nothing wrong? I'm not altogether right now. So the question was, I did a video recently about sportsmanship, as it related to specifically the LVO. There was a kerfuffle at the LVO. I would pachow it and tell you how to go watch it, but you can't do that here in the live show. So anyway, but what happened was, it was just a couple weeks ago, the video. What happened was, they were playing in the tournament, and it was the semifinals, and it was on Twitch, I think, through probably either Frontline Gaming's channel or through Games Workshop, so I'm not sure which one. Anyway, so you know how sometimes, like, you're playing a game and there's a sequence to the way the turn goes. First you have to do movement, and then you have to do shooting, and then you have to do assault or whatever. One of the guys did something slightly out of order, and I wasn't watching the game, so I don't know specifically, but he moved something, and then it was, usually you go, oh, I gotta do, sorry, can I just, and then usually your opponent's like, yeah, that's cool. But this opponent was like, no, you can't. You already moved that, so you can't do this thing because you've already gone on to the next phase, or whatever the deal was. And the guy that this happened to, rather than getting all angry and freaking out and being a jerk, was just like, okay, that's fair. And then went on and finished the rest of the game and lost, because there was no way at this point, because he'd goofed it up like that, there was no way he was going to be able to go forward and finish. And so he just finished the game and was very civil and everything and whatever. And there was a guy who, his name is, I can't think of his name now. Something Merrill? Mark Merrill, I believe. It's definitely Mark. I can't remember his last name. Anyway, he is he's maybe the CEO or the founder or the co-founder or whatever of Riot Games, who makes a game called League of Legends, which, if you play video games, I guess is the premier esport mostly on the planet. League of Legends is the big game. So he works for Riot Games. They make a lot of money. He makes a lot of money. And he was so impressed that this guy, Andy, I think his name is, didn't freak out, that he tweeted to the LVO and was like, or to actually the Frontline, and was like, hey, I want to give that guy $5,000. And then that started a whole thing. And Andy was like, well, actually, I want you to give that $5,000 to a children's hospital, which is awesome. And then Andy got his employer to match it, and then Games Workshop got involved, and they wanted to match it. And so like $15,000 goes to a children's hospital, which is totally good, absolutely. And then the rest of the video was me talking about, but it's weird that the fact that he did not freak out and make a scene was something that was so surprising to someone that they had to they felt it was worth $5,000. And so the question that was asked here in chat was, do you think that guy, not Andy, but the other person he was playing against, do you think that person knows that they're being that guy? And that's a very good question. I would say that some people use that to their advantage. They use making a scene and being a jerk to their advantage. Especially in a situation when we're talking about, there was a $4,000 prize potential for winning the entire tournament, from what I've been told. I think other people don't even have the self-awareness sometimes to realize that this is the case and that this is what they're doing. And my point in the video is that we're all playing a game here, right? This is a game. I understand it's a tournament, and there's money on the line, but the money should just be icing on the cake. You should be really, in my mind, and again, I'm not a competitive player, so you can tell me to go take a run in the lake, but I think that I personally think it's wrong when games aren't fun and they're that stressful. It doesn't seem like a game to me at that point. Anyway, I don't want to go off on it too much because, like I said, I already did a video about it, and hopefully some of you have seen it. But the fact of the matter is that, yeah, I don't know, man. I just, one of the shirts I'm going to be making soon is going to actually reference the fact that I think that games should be fun. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's just, when I heard the whole story, I was just like, man, this is kind of a bummer that we've gotten to this point where in the tournament scene, I don't know, with some tournaments specifically and some people in tournaments, it can be really toxic. I would love to see more ways to make tournaments more fun and less, obviously they have to be competitive, and there's some people who really love the competitive thing, but it really doesn't seem like they're having any fun. It really seems that they're being very serious about this, and they're absolutely having to win for reasons. I don't know. I think if you're really super, super concerned about winning a game, I've always felt that there's something else going on there. You know what I mean? Like, maybe you don't have any other wins going on in the rest of your life, so you're like, well, at least if I can win this game, I've won something. And I don't know. I don't want to put that on people, but I don't know. I just don't understand the win at all costs mindset. Anyway, I've yammered on about that too long and not looked at the chat, so that's my opinion on that. Peter Magro says Shadespire would benefit from an extra board / terrain tiles, but GW wants to sell models. My best guess is some kind of elves and chaos like Blightkin, if any. 6 factions is enough, though, for variation. I think to launch, I think that that's the case. I think that, definitely, well, not that they had all 6 ready to go from launch. They only really had the 2, and then the skeletons and the orcs came maybe a couple of months later after launch, I think, because they came in December or maybe January. And then they released just recently the Fire Slayer dwarves and the Skaven, who are over here. So here are the chosen axes. These are your Fire Slayer dwarves. You can see that they're not nearly that bright orange actually. When you open them up, they're much more of a dark orange, maybe almost a burnt. No, not a burnt umber. There's not enough brown. But anyway, so yeah. Basically, mostly naked, giant bearded dwarves running around with big axes and hammers. That's the chosen axe, or chosen axes. And then there's Spike Claw's Swarm, and these are cool Skaven dudes, and they are in a darker brown than this too. So these guys, 4 models, and these guys, 5. Specifically, like, this guy here is really cool because he's like running on like a piece of sewer something or other. It's just these are very dynamic, really cool sculpts. I really like these. These, frankly, are not nearly as dynamic in my opinion. Like this, hang on. This guy here is kind of running forward, but the rest of them are just sort of standing there. And I know I know dwarves can like run. I mean, not very super fast because they got little tiny legs, but they could be. I just didn't like these. Will probably be the very last that I paint because I'm just I don't know. The sculpts just don't do much for me. These guys are going to be cool. I'm looking forward to these. So probably what's going to happen is that I'm going to do. So I've got my Stormcast and I've got my Khorne Blood Reavers done. You've seen those on the video that I did back when Shadespire came out. If you've seen that video, I've got my Orcs built, and they will become a hobby progress vlog very soon. And then, I don't know, I might do, even though I love death and I love the skeletons and all that stuff, I might do these guys before I do the skeletons. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, I guess basically that kind of begs the question, like, what's coming next for Shadespire? What new boxes like this? And if you don't know, so Shadespire in the base game comes with two forces. Comes with the Stormcast, comes with the Blood Reavers, and has the cards and the parts and all the stuff in there for that. And then these boxes, and then the base game costs like $60 American. These boxes are $30 American. They come with the models that you see, here in this case, and then they come with a deck of cards and the stuff like that you need to be able to play in the game. So you basically can add a faction to your Shadespire game for about $30 American. So the question is, what are the next ones of these boxes that they're going to produce? Currently, the rumors, I've been looking around a little bit. There haven't been a lot of great rumors. There's been talk about how in the instruction manual in the main base game, there's talk about Stormcast Vanguards, who are the more lightly armored guys who have more of a range attack thing going on, or sometimes they're on even mounted pieces like these kind of little griffin dudes. And then there's also and I forget what the Khorne guys are in the big heavy armor, blood something. Everything's blood with those guys. Blood Warriors, maybe? That might be right. But they're, like the Blood Reavers most of them are shirtless and not very armored. They maybe have some thigh armor, and that's about it. And some of them have helmets. Whereas I think the other guys, whatever they're called, Blood Warriors, they look almost a little bit more like Space Marines. Like they're covered head to toe pretty much in armor. So, I mean, they could add those. That'd be fine, except that they've already done both of those armies, and I don't know that they necessarily need to do those right away. I would personally prefer, and I think it would be smart of them, to try to grab some of the other armies that are out there. If they were to make a Seraphon box, aka Lizardmen, lizard people, lizard folk, I would snap that up right away. One of the reasons I'm so excited about the Orc box for Shadespire, the little Orc box like this, is because I've never painted Orcs before. Like, I've never been like, well, geez, I'm going to sit down and paint an entire Orc army because that's going to take forever, and I don't necessarily want to play Orcs in Age of Sigmar or in even 40K, but the concept that I could paint 4 and get to play with those, that's cool. That's one of the big benefits, I think, of Shadespire in general as a game, as a starter game, especially for people, and for people like me who have been playing for a while, but also want to play something that's kind of quick and fun and also get little tastes. It's almost like going to the... to a buffet, you know what I mean? You can take a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I kind of like buffets because of that. So if they were to make some Seraphon and I could paint up some cool lizard people, that would be awesome. I would really dig that. I would also really like to see, not necessarily for myself, but for some people that I know, I'd like to see some Sylvaneth. I'd like to see some tree people. I think that would be really cool. I think they could do some really cool dynamic stuff with some of the tree sculpts. They might be kind of hard to carry around when you go from place to place if they get real spindly and everything, but you could definitely make some really cool stuff, I think, with the Sylvaneth. Now, they've kind of ignored regular elves. They've ignored free peoples at this point. Irregular elves, I guess, also they've ignored, which was to say, dark elves and stuff. You might see Daughters of Cain. Daughters of Cain, you may see some of them, although I don't know. Maybe. I think some of the benefit also to Shadespire and for them as getting people in the hobby is that every one of these boxes doesn't come with it, but you go online and download there's basically a war scroll. And it's not like there's a war scroll for each person or each model in the box. They're usually a unit. So there's a war scroll for the Stormcast. There's a war scroll for the Sepulchral Guard, the Skeleton folks. So you kind of use them as a unit, and they go out and they do their thing, which I think is really interesting because then you can kind of double dip and use them for Shadespire. And then you're like, well, gosh, I've already got these guys. I might as well start, an Age of Sigmar army because I've got these guys. So I think that's the thought process. But it's very interesting. It will allow, I think, Games Workshop, hopefully to get more people into the hobby. And you're also starting to see this, also kind of getting back to my previous point, though. You're starting to see this be a tournament type game, too. I think one of the benefits to this being a tournament game is that it is a little bit more rigid. You know, when you're playing a normal game of 40K or Age of Sigmar or pretty much anything else on a board, one of the problems with tournament games is that it's very easy to move your guys an extra half inch. You know what I mean? Or move them an extra quarter inch or something along those lines. That's very simple to do. And when you do that, then all of a sudden there can be a lot of like, I think you moved that guy too far, and I think this is a problem, and then back and forth, and you have to call a judge, and there can just be a lot of wiggle room, which you don't obviously want in a tournament session, a tournament type game. In Shadespire, you're playing on a hex grid, so you either move them into a hex or you do not. There is no, I'm partially moved into a hex. You see what I'm saying? So the benefit there is that it allows you, you know, as a player to know the rules. When the rules are a little bit simpler, they're a little bit easier to make sure that that there's no wiggle room. You know what I mean? Think about like American football. In American football these days, and my wife is chuckling, she's a football fan, I'm not, but I see, especially in the last couple of seasons, a lot of like, well, did that count as a catch, or was that not a catch? I'm like, well, he caught it. Well, but he was doing this, and his left foot was moving like that, and did he have control of it? And it can become very subjective, right? Because there's no like hard and fast, absolutely this happened or absolutely that happened. There can be a lot of wiggle room. With a game like Shadespire, and you know, I'm not saying the Shadespire is a board game, but it has board game elements. I would definitely call it a gateway game. Some of those games, because the rules are a little bit more rigid, it makes them a little bit better for tournament play. Anyway, that's my 2 cents about that. VJ Morph says, I wouldn't be surprised if we got an Underworld setting change every 12 to 24 months. That's also a good point. So the game is called Warhammer Underworlds Shadespire. So they could make a new Warhammer Underworlds and make it on a different realm. You know, I mean, there are 8 different realms in Age of Sigmar, so they could be all over the place. So it could be the same game, roughly, with different tiles and different forces, or they could do it like that, or they could release an entire game that's like it, but like not an update, but maybe slightly different rules. And that's also a good point. I hadn't thought of that. Oh, I totally forgot about the Caradron Overlords, those flying dwarf dudes with the airships. That's the thing, is that really the Caradon, like, as an army, they're super cool because of their big flying boats, which you would not be able to bring a big flying boat onto a Shadespire map. So, I don't know, maybe. Plus, I don't know what flying would do for you as a keyword or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, there's, again, because the game is a lot more simple. Like, there's very little range. There's like in the base box, there's one guy who can hit people 2 hexes away. That's it. That's another reason why I'm not so sure that they're going to jump on the Stormcast Vanguard real quick either, because the Vanguard are very, you know, they're kind of range heavy. That's kind of their thing. And I don't know how the game would handle, you know, somebody who can shoot 5, 6, 7 hexes away. I don't know. I'd also like to see Nurgle, but that's just because I'm a big Nurgle fan. I'd like to see a force of like kind of Blight King looking guys, not Nurglings, not those guys, not Plague Bearers. I want to see more something along the lines of Blight Kings. I want to see basically new Blight King models. That would be super awesome. So let's just go with that. Some people want to see some Witch Elves, Beastclaw Raiders, and Ogres. Well, thing is that they have to be kind of, aren't a lot of them on cavalry? Like, I don't think cavalry is going to work super hot in this game, but maybe. Everchosen? Well, yeah, that'd be kind of cool. Maybe. Moon Clan. Oh, yeah, I'd love to get that. That would be fun to see a box of Moon Clan, like, gobos or whatever. It would have to probably be more than 7. Because currently, right now, the Skeletons is the box with the most figures in it. And there's 7 of them, because they're basically, you know, they're skeletons. They're sort of easy to kill. Whereas like Shades, the Stormcast, they've got like 3 in the same army. That's the thing that's also nice about it, is you don't have to sit down and worry about points. It's just like you have a faction. Here you go. You're bringing these guys, or you're not bringing these guys. That's it. There's no like, well, I think I'm going to do this and that and change. I mean, the thought process and the changing, tweaking, and the, I don't want to say min-maxing, but that stuff is really part of the deck building, which I think is fun. But the models are the models, which I think is also a good idea. Justin Davies says new Shadespire boards would be nice, or some terrain. Yeah, I think that'd be kind of cool. There's not a lot of terrain in the game. I mean, there's like those spots where there's like, yeah, you can't go through there, but there's not like cover or anything like that because there's not really a need for it. I mean, if anything, basically just some new pieces to lay down saying, yeah, you can't go through here, maybe, but I don't know. That's a good question. The thing is I don't think that they want to make it like, if we start talking about adding more and adding more and adding more, that just runs afoul of the thing I was just talking about, where the more you add to the rules and the more tweakage and the more kind of like, well, I think it goes like this, well, I think it goes like that, it becomes troubling and problematic for, tournaments, for organized play, stuff like that. Brew Geek says, I love the crossover aspect with Age of Sigmar. That made all these Shadespire packs insta-buys. Yeah, I think that's also a super smart idea on their part. The more that you can get people to look at it and go, well, I can use it for Shadespire, but I can also use it in my Age of Sigmar army. That's when something can be used for 2 different things, a lot more people are more interested to get on board. Can you guys hear that? Maggie, what are you doing?
Dragon fleecing.
Oh, yeah. One of our cats, she has this long piece of like fleece material that's braided, and sometimes she'll just carry it in her mouth and sing like that as she just walks around the house. We like to call it the Fleecy Parade. And yeah, so anyway, that's what that was. I would try to get her up here, but there's no good way to do so. Anyway, that's Maggie. And I can't get the camera off of the thing to show you. Well, here, let me see if I can get her. She's kind of a tubbo. Oh. Maggie, see? There you are on TV. Not really. Now let's try to get you back down. Oh, geez. Okay. She's the heavy one. So she's not as easy to whip around and hold like a baby. Her sister's way more likely to do that, but her sister's sleeping someplace. All right, anyway. Hey, there she is on the TV over there. All right. There's a lag in what I see versus what's going on over here, so that's why I could see her. All right. Zachary Campbell asks, anyone here play Frostgrave? Just bought the book and wondering if y'all like it. I do like it, and probably will be doing some Frostgrave battle reports in the new studio eventually as well. I have 2 forces now or 2 war bands, I guess, for Frostgrave that are now painted. I went with a local commission painter because I knew that I had a bunch of other stuff I had to get done first, and these guys kept getting pushed to the back burner. So I thought, well, why don't I work with somebody local? And Sam was all booked up, so because he's booked up a lot. He's got lots of teaching that he's doing, plus he's doing lots of other models and stuff. And plus it's also getting closer and closer to Crystal Brush season. Crystal Brush is a big painting competition that happens at Adepticon, so he's pretty much head down right now getting ready for Adepticon. I guess he's working on a really big or a very in-depth diorama that he wants to have done in time for Crystal Brush. So there's that. What else? So anyway, so I got another guy local. His name is Brandon, and he's very good. So I'm going to do a video about them at some point and do some nice close-up images and photography and such like that. So yeah, we'll get some of that. But yeah, Frostgrave is a great game. Osprey really hit it out of the park, I think, with that. And I've talked to the creator a little bit at a couple of different conventions. Super nice guy. And yeah, like I said, I'm looking forward to doing some battle reports with it because it's a game that I enjoy. That's the thing, is I'm going to be probably doing battle reports for games that I enjoy. So I won't necessarily do them for all games because I don't really enjoy all games. James Conley says, when something can be used for two different things, that is better. Still waiting for masses of Chaos Demon players. Still waiting. Yeah, I mean, now, especially now that that Age of Sigmar and 40k are both on round bases, I would think that there would be a lot of Chaos Demon players who can switch back and forth between Age of Sigmar and 40k because the models are basically the same. You know, obviously the stats and things like that are very different, but the models are the same. I know some Chaos players, Chaos Demon players specifically. There was a tournament at that little convention that I was at recently on Sunday, and one of the guys who almost won the tournament was running Chaos Demons with a bunch of, I think he had Magnus the Red and like two or three Demon Princes. It was kind of a gross list, but you know that's tournament play. The guy who won is a good friend of mine who won with a totally gross, Eldar list, of course. So yeah. But anyway, yeah, it's very interesting to kind of see that stuff. Irrational Gaz says, haha, I thought that was my cat that I can hear in the background. Are Beastmen still a thing? A Beastmen warband would be cool for Shadespire. Yeah, I would like some new Beastmen sculpts in general. I think that'd be a hoot. Yeah, definitely. Joshua Daniel Flores says, is it possible to challenge you at your studio and do some sort of battle report thing a la mini wargaming? I've thought about that. Potentially. I mean, probably, kind of. I don't know that people are going to fly from all over to come here and play in Wisconsin. But, yeah, maybe. I've been kicking around that idea. There's not like the new place that Mini Wargaming is doing where there's going to be, you'll be able to stay there, like, on site, and there's, housing, and nothing like that. But eventually, at some point, yeah. John J. asks about having a curriculum of sorts for new painters with new techniques and things to work on. Yeah, I do want to make a new series at some point this year as well. And I would like to do something where I'm talking very specifically step by step. Like, this is how you trim off stuff from the sprues and get rid of all the little spurs and the mold lines. And the next one is about gluing, and the next one is about priming. And they may not be particularly interesting to a lot of you because a lot of you know this stuff, but I always love to watch even tutorials about stuff that I know, because every once in a while there's something like, oh geez, I didn't know that about this little thing. So I always learn stuff from them. So yeah, I've been kicking around that idea of going step by step, making a video about every step and doing that. I need to do more of that also for the airbrush series as well. I need to do a video soon about how to actually, because when you see, like, if you just want to, like, prime or base coat, yeah, that's easy. You can probably figure that out. You just spray, Don't spray too thick, don't spray too thin. But to get that look, and some people like that look and some people don't, of something that's airbrushed, where it's kind of, like, darker around the edges of the panel but lighter in the middle. I want to kind of show some of that stuff, too. So, yeah. VJ Morph asks, Adam, do you think you'll pick up Blood Bowl Blitz? I doubt it, but I'm glad that they're doing it. So for those of you that don't know, Blood Bowl Blitz is basically an even simpler kind of intro version of Blood Bowl that they announced at the, kind of quietly, they announced it at the New York Toy Show, Games Workshop did, as far as I can tell. So yeah, I'm looking at that. I saw it, but I don't see myself getting it, but I think it's cool that they're doing it because it helps get people into games like that. Randall asks, Osprey seems to be on the rise. I agree, it is. Looking at getting into Gaslands. Any thoughts? The book is in the other room. Osprey sent me a copy of Gaslands, and I was a big Car Wars fan, so I am interested in looking at it. The only downside is I would have to figure out like how to build like terrain in an arena, or not an arena, but well, kind of, yeah, actually, because the story behind Gaslands is basically that it's more of a sport. In the original Car Wars, there were places you could go to do arena combat, but you also could just get into fights on the road. And in this, it seems to be predominantly just arena combat. Again, it's more of a sort of a post-apocalyptic sort of a thing, but and you generally use more Matchbox size cars or Hot Wheels size cars or whatever, as opposed to much smaller cars in Car Wars. I've been looking through the book. It looks maybe just a touch more complicated than I kind of wish it was. So I'm going to look and see if there's maybe like kind of beginner section and then maybe it gets more into advanced. I need to kind of really read through it a little bit more time. I haven't had the time lately, but I do have a copy of it. So I do, because of my love for Car Wars back in the day when I was in college, I do definitely want to check it out. Brew Geek says, I just got the Gaslands book. It looks like a lot of fun. Plus, you get to mod Hot Wheel cars. Well, yeah, that is kind of cool. I do like that. That's sort of fun. Anthony says, just about to get into Frostgrave and Gasland. North Star Miniatures. North Star Miniatures is kind of the company that makes the miniatures that work generally with Osprey stuff. Is right around the corner from Warhammer World as well, so super close for me. Well, that sounds fun. So yeah, yeah, Gaslands is very interesting. Like a lot of the stuff that Osprey's been putting out lately. You know, Dracula's America. That's really cool looking. And I've got some models for that. What did they just send me? They sent me an expansion for Dracula's America, and I just got a package this week. It's at work, though. I don't completely remember. It was a couple... I know there's going to be a couple new things coming out also at Adepticon. The guy that I know named Tim is writing some stuff for them, and he's going to be doing some demos at Adepticon for stuff that he's doing for Osprey. So I'm looking forward to that too. Vikings-based kind of game too, which is neat. So, Meaning Reen says, I would like to pay someone to get rid of my mold lines. Yeah, mold lines are, well, I don't know. I find it to be a little therapeutic sometimes just to sit there and like listen to a podcast or an audiobook and just kind of get rid of mold lines when they're in like really tiny, weird, hard to reach places, or when they're like on top of like detail. Then that's not nearly as much fun. Sculptors that end up making it so that the mold line goes across important detail, I think are doing it wrong, and I wish they would cut it out. Like I don't wish them any harm. I'm just saying I wish they would, stop doing that. Zombie Boy says, I've always thought a video tutorial on the logic of the order in which you paint each base color would be good to help newbies think about how it helps to neaten minis. Yeah, actually I did a video a couple years back about how to paint your skeleton horde, and in that I do things basically like, so I prime everything bone color. I give everything like a sepia wash because we're talking about skeletons, mostly the bone stuff. But then in the video, I'm like, now you go through and paint the detail, like the swords and the shields and the belts and the other stuff that they might have on them. And then you go back and dry brush the bone color till you like lighten up over the wash. And now that when I go back now and I paint skeletons, I don't do it in that order anymore. I do prime it bone, give it a good sepia wash, then do all the light, highlight dry brushing on all the bone parts, because then you don't have to be as careful. You can kind of get it all over the place. And if it gets onto the shield or the sword or the belt or the whatever they're wearing, it's fine because you're going to base coat over the top of the overbrush next. So it's okay. If you've already painted those parts and now you're trying to dry brush the bone parts, you sort of have a tendency to kind of, back off a little bit when you get closer to things you've already painted, because you don't want to get dry brush on top of those parts yet. So kind of switching up that order and thinking about like why you do things in certain orders, I think is important. I did a video and also a number of years back about painting from the inside out, and I think that more new painters could go back and watch that to learn more about, like, if you paint the skin on a model first after you've primed or whatever, you paint the skin first. Like in this situation, I've got a t-shirt. If you were to paint the skin here around my neck and everything, and you get some paint on the t-shirt, which is a raised surface, it's okay, because now when you go back and you paint the t-shirt, it's harder for you, hopefully, to get extra paint on the neck because this part's raised. Whereas if you paint the t-shirt first and then you go back and start to paint the neck, you're going to be bumping your brush up against the raised part here, and you're going to get paint onto this part. So when you do it from that inside out, if I painted the t-shirt here, wrong side, sorry. If I painted, this is like a mirror, or a reverse mirror. So you paint the t-shirt here, right? And now you want to paint the hoodie. Painting up to the edge here is easier because then you can kind of just catch the edge here. If you painted the hoodie first and now try to paint this, you're going to get t-shirt color on the hoodie. That's basically the whole idea of painting inside out. Every once in a while you find some sort of exception to the rule, certainly, like maybe you end up painting an entire model who's in power armor, and then you paint their face last because that's technically the lower surface, but the face is like just easier to get last because of whatever reasons. That kind of stuff. So yeah, those kind of thought processes. If you are a newer painter and you haven't seen the Inside Out one, I would go take a look for it. I think it's an Uncle Adam's Pro Tips, but I'm not 100% sure. So I would check that out. The Noob Painter says, Gaslands looks complicated, but overall it's just a little rigid in steps. Once you start, it's easy. It's good to hear. I might bring it to TMX since it's easy to transport. Oh, that makes sense. That's cool. Glad to hear you're coming to TMX. For those of you who don't know, TMX, that is the Tabletop Minions Expo, which is my little tiny convention that's coming up June 9th and 10th. I really need to make a lower thirds for that. What do I have over here? This says title. Oh, no, that's that. Okay. Patreon, coupon. No. Okay. I need to make a TMX little lower third thing that goes down at the bottom of the page. Yeah, so June 9th and 10th, 2018. Actually, the website, which is tabletopminions.org/TMX, is now working. So there have already been, I know Jesse Daniels put in a couple of events. I need to put them in today so that they're on the actual page. Other people can start putting in events if you want to run things, and I will put them on the page so that people will know. It's just a small little convention. There's no tournaments. There's nothing like that. It's some seminars, hopefully. I know Mac the Maker wants to do some stuff about 3D, 3D printing. And I know that Sam's hoping to do some stuff, and I'm going to look for some other ones as well. And I'm also, basically, it's all demo games. So you just come and play. People who are going to run them are going to run games. You don't need to bring your army. There's no tournaments. Like I said, it's just pretty much come and learn new games, homebrew games, different stuff that you find, that thing. That's what TMX is. So I'll talk more about it in another upcoming, probably one of these or something like that. I'll have some pictures from last year. We had a lot of fun last year. Irrational Gaz says, Mould Lines have been the bane of my life whilst painting my Dire Avengers recently. Yeah. Like I said, Games Workshop's getting better about hiding them. Other companies are still sometimes having trouble. Like I know when they first switched over to plastics, Privature Press, the very first plastics that they made, which are really more kind of resinish or almost restic, which is a mixture of resin and plastic. I don't know if that's a real word. It's just what the word people use. Anyway, I was trying to build one of their first Kador plastic warjacks, and wow, the Mould Lines went over all kinds of pieces of detail and in weird places, and it was just not cool. I've been told they've gotten a little better, but I don't know. Mould Lines can be a pain. And the thing is if you just go, well, I don't care, that when you paint them, you will care. You will be like, oh man, because they really stand out when you paint. Let's see here. VG Morph says, the painting inside out tutorial you do was one of my very first Tabletop Minions videos I saw. Very good advice. Well, good. I'm glad to hear it. Zombie Boy says, I like Games Workshop's Duncan's TV tutorials, but sometimes I'm like, why is he doing the flesh now? Yeah, I mean, again, like I said, there are always exceptions to rules. And there are sometimes when, like I said, especially with Space Marines, I generally do the flesh last. Like I prime them, I base coat and highlight with an airbrush or a rattle can or whatever, and then get all that stuff, and I start working on all the armor because there's so much of it. And then if it's like a sergeant and he's got his helmet off for some dumb reason, I don't know why sergeants take their helmet off, but anyway, if he does, then I generally paint the face last, which in most situations you would paint skin first, but in that situation, because there's so little of it, then I generally go last. And in many situations though, like when I did the Blood Reavers for wait, hang on, it's not a picture of mine, but so like this guy here in the middle, right, that guy is a Blood Reaver, and he's basically just wearing pants and no shirt. Well, I still primed them a dark red color with a rattle can, and then went back, and the very first thing after I primed them was to do the flesh tones. So I painted them all mostly with like a white primer, except there was a couple of them with a darker color because I wanted them to be, and by white primer I mean a brush-on primer. I use a white brush-on primer from Reaper quite frequently if I'm making a Caucasian, skin tone, if I've already had to prime everything a lot darker, like because I'm doing like let's say it's again like a Space Marine. If I'm doing blue and then I do the highlight and all that stuff, now I want to paint face, but he's got blue because I've sprayed it. I don't just start putting on layers of, Caucasian color or whatever color I'm going with. I generally try to throw on a brush-on primer as the first layer, and it will look a little patchy, but then you throw a flesh color over it, let's say a Caucasian type flesh color over it in that situation. That helps because you're not having to try to put a Caucasian color directly over blue, right? So like one of my Blood Reavers is more of a darker skinned guy. Actually, I tried to make different skin tones for all of them, just kind of because I wanted to see what it looked like. And in that situation, I started with a darker, like basically like a chocolate brown, I think is the base. I didn't throw down a primer in that one. I mean, other than the spray, the red that I did on all of them, I didn't throw down a brush-on primer first. I think I just went straight over with like a chocolate brown, and then I did maybe another layer of that, real thin, and then some washes, and then started doing highlighting and things like that. It was just interesting to work on those guys because it's just fun to be able to try to pick up a bunch of different skin tones and stuff like that. Whereas the Stormcast, there's only one of them, and he's got his helmet off. That's the only skin you get to see on the 3 Stormcast. So. What else have we got here? Snoogans TV. Oh boy, was going to order a miniature holder grip. Ended up getting stuff for like €100. Damn it. Well, yeah, that's... I mean, a lot of companies do that where they're like, well, if you want free shipping, you get free shipping at $75 or $65. I think is the GW website, at least in America, I think you get free shipping if you buy at least $65 worth of stuff. So then you're like, well, I don't want to pay shipping. I mean, that would be wasteful, So I might as well buy a bunch of other stuff, and then that's how they get you. So yeah, actually, I do have some of the handles now, the little grippy handle things, because they were out of stock for a while, and I think I got one locally, and then So I'm looking forward to starting to use those for. Not for regular, like if you're just doing regular troops, I'm still sticking them to those big paint stirrer sticks that you get at the hardware store when you buy a gallon of house paint or whatever. But for specific, like more HQ-oriented models, they're going to be using those handles, I think. The only thing is I wish that the handles on the bottom, I wish they had a hole in the bottom so that you put them like on a spindle, because my fear is that they're going to be tippy, you know what I mean? They're not, I don't know. When I use paint bottles, if I have a top-heavy model on top of a paint bottle, I usually throw some rocks in the paint bottle to give it more of a weight. So when I set it on the table, it stays there. It doesn't tip over unless you really, hammer on the tables, like with your thigh or something by accident. But yeah, I don't know. I do wish that those handles. I was gonna say I could take a drill to one and see if I could just make my own hole in there and then put them on spindles. We'll see how that works out. James Dean says, Adam, I really thought that Malign Portents would expand the Death faction. They're so small. Do you think we'll ever see new stuff? We don't even have the Khemri-style figures anymore. Death faction is way small. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I would love to see some more Death stuff. As a person who's building a Death army, I would love to see more Death stuff. Yeah, I don't know. Because they're going Daughters of Cain right now. Allegedly, these Deepkin are coming, which... when I was on the Andy and Rem show earlier this week, we talked about how much we really hope these are fishmen. We really hope these are fishmen. We don't know if they will be, but it'd be cool. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they're... Yeah, you're right. When Malign Portents came out, I was like, okay, cool. We're going to start seeing some super cool Death stuff. And we saw those 4 models, which are pretty cool. And then we saw the re-release, basically, of that big piece of terrain, which is now called the War Scry Citadel. It used to be called the something Manse. Yeah, I don't know. I do wish that we would see a bit more Death stuff. I'm assuming either maybe it just doesn't sell as well. I would think that if they made some more, though, it might sell better. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what their plan is sometimes. Which, well, I don't know what their plan is anytime, really, until they tell us. But I do wonder sometimes, like, how they make the decisions they make. I got to assume, as a company that size, a lot of it's based off of, like, sales and, like, what they're going to try to do to make more money. Because they've got a lot of people to, give money to, so those people can feed their families and whatever. I'm not against a company being a company, but it is interesting. Kelly asks, what color is your Space Marine army? My Space Marine army is blue, so I'm using Vallejo. It's even called Ultramarine. See, the thing about Ultramarines is the word Ultramarine is a joke. And I don't mean to be dismissive of it. I mean, the concept of the Ultramarines being blue is a kind of an art nerd inside joke, because way before there was Games Workshop, way before there were Space Marines and that stuff, there was a color just known as ultramarine blue. Like when I was in school, we learned about the different colors. You got cadmium white titanium white, cadmium yellow, all kinds of different colors and stuff like that, and ultramarine blue. So the fact that these models were called the Ultramarines and that their armor was blue was sort of kind of an inside joke that probably somebody who went to art school and worked at early Games Workshop was like, hee, we'll paint these guys blue because they're called Ultramarines, and that's funny. And it's pretty much just an art nerd joke. So anyway, so I have Vallejo Ultramarine airbrush primer, which is surprisingly blue. And so that's the base color for those guys. And then I'll be probably throwing a darker wash on and then highlighting up a little bit. And then their shoulder pads, aka pauldrons, will be basically like, I'm going to paint them silver. And then on the inside part, I'm going to throw a lot of black wash. So the inside part of the pauldrons or whatever are going to be like a dirty silver, but the rim will be a brighter silver because I'm not going to throw wash on that part. So that's basically what I'm doing for mine. And I'm going to get priming on them right after I get back from Adepticon. Like, they won't be at Adepticon. They're all built. They're all textured. All the bases are textured. 2,000 points. And even their shoulder pads have got the cool symbol on them and all that stuff. That's all done. They're sitting in a box downstairs just waiting for me to have the time to sit down and crank on them as I've been working on other projects. So like I said, right after Adepticon, they're going to get primed. So looking forward to it. Sebastian says, I would love to see the old vampire factions return in a way. Yeah, I think they'd be really cool too. I'd like to see more vampire stuff. I was never super into like the Tomb King stuff so much. But like my spearmen, my skeleton spearmen are basically Tomb Kings, but they don't look that Tomb Kingy, especially if you don't paint them in gold. Like if you just paint the metals all like silverish type colors and you keep them kind of dark and grungy and you don't go that gold and blue scheme, they don't look that, at least in my mind, they don't look specifically that Tomb Kingish. They don't look that Egyptian. If you go that route, they look more like it. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Dr. V says, I find that the handle, talking about the little handle thing that they make at Games Workshop, will not tip over just sitting there, minor table motion. However, they will fall over if directly bumped. I just wish the handles were able to hold models not on a base. So like if them, oh yeah, that would be hard with that type of kind of grippy thing. If you want to hold models that aren't already in a base, then what I do is I went on eBay and I bought a bag of champagne corks. So I think there must be people who work at restaurants, like fancy restaurants, who have to open a lot of champagne and then they just keep all the corks. And then they take them home with them because they're going to be thrown in the garbage anyway, and they sell them on eBay for crafters, basically. So I bought a bag of 50 Prosecco, I think it's called, which is evidently maybe a type of champagne or just some sort of sparkling wine. So I bought a bag of 50 Prosecco used corks. And I don't know, it was like $8 or something like that. So someone shipped it to me, and then I will, when I'm working on a model that's not going to be on a base initially, I will drill into the bottom of the feet and then glue in some and little pieces of paper clip, like the thicker paper clips, not the real skinny ones. And then I just stick those into the cork. And then when it's time to actually put the model onto the base, then what I do is I trim the little pins that are coming out of their feet, not all the way flush with the feet, but down enough, like where I want them to go into the base, so they don't go through the base, obviously, that kind of thing. And then I put a little dab of paint, little tiny dab of paint on the tip of each of the pins, and then I touch it to the base, like which has also been painted already, like where I want it to be. And now I have two dots in the base, and now I know where to drill. So I drill into the base, and then I push the stuff in there with a little bit of glue, and everything's set and ready to go. I should make a video about how to do that. Anyway, yeah, so that kind of stuff is the way that I've done it. I don't know how this particular kind of grippy handle thing would work for something that's not on a base. That the whole spring-loaded part is really, it's kind of, you need it on a base. So there's that. Let's see, what else have we got here? Got a lot of different chat going on. Love to see it. Got almost 400 people in the chat. What else have we got here? Back and forth a lot. Let's see here. Okay, LAV2, or LAV2, I guess. Tabletop Minions, I don't know if you are familiar with the Thousand Suns cult's new codex. I'm trying to do the Hermetic Blades cult color for my rubric, but I don't know what color to use. Neither do I. No, I'm not familiar with it. The only thing I know about like Thousand Suns is generally blue and gold. Mostly blue, and then the gold is the trim. But if it's a specific different group within that, I've not even looked at that book, so I can't help you. Sorry. I mean, honestly, I would just do Google searches and try to find like Google image searches of like Hermetic Blades, Thousand Suns, and then just do Google image search, and you can see a bunch of colors, probably of stuff that other people have painted, and then kind of go from there. I do a lot of Google image searches to figure out how I want to paint things. So, and then you can kind of grab an image and save it, and then keep a little folder, and then go back and refer to it if you want to. The 40K Lowdown says, how long left would you say the tabletop game industry has in its current form? I can't really imagine it still existing in 50 years' time. That's a very good question. That's a very good question. Because I did a video recently about augmented reality, sort of recently, and how augmented reality could be the future of wargaming to some degree. I think there's always going to be dorks like me who want to paint, and want to do the hobby and the crafting. I think when video gaming started getting bigger and bigger, I think a lot of people called for the death knell of wargaming and said, well, no, now that you can play, basically 40K on your Atari 2600 or whatever, that kind of thing. Why would you sit there and bother to? But we still do. If anything, we're doing it more than ever. I think it'll ebb and flow. I think that maybe some sort of new technology, like I talked about, maybe 3D printing will become real big, and then people will start cranking out all kinds of stuff. We're starting at work to get a little bit into role-playing games. We're going to start playing Dungeons & Dragons, and I was looking at the Hero Forge website. If you haven't gotten a chance, take a look at the Hero Forge website. It is a website where you can design your own model, and they'll 3D print it and mail it to you through Shapeways. So, like, you can pick, like, I want to be a dragon person or a human or a dwarf or whatever, and then I want to be male or female, and then you can pick different weapons and clothing and all kinds of stuff, and it's just click, 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 and poses and all that kind of stuff, and then you get this model. It's like, that's exactly what my guy in my role-playing game, let's say, looks like. And then you can get it printed, and it's not cheap. Like, shipped, it's about $35, but, to be fair, some of the models that you're buying now from Games Workshop, like the one-off models are like $35. So, and that's not with shipping. So anyway, you make this 3D model, and then you've got this really cool guy. Because in role-playing games, generally you have your one person. If you were going to do that to try to build, let's say, a warband, even of like something like Shadespire, like here's 5 rat people. If you had to print out a special model at $35 a piece for each, that would be very expensive. So, but for your one guy that you're going to play in your campaign, that's kind of a cool thing. Well, as that expands and goes forward, you might see a lot more people starting to be able to crank out really nice models and be able to do it all themselves and customize it, and all the creativity kind of go nuts. But yeah, I don't know. I think you could also see a lot of people also doing some augmented reality stuff where you're still playing with regular models and you're still playing with a person who's right there. But when you either look through the goggles that you're wearing or, the glasses that are now basically augmented reality and that kind of stuff, it just looks like normal glasses, but you're looking down and you're seeing ranges and like how many wounds this guy's got left, and it's basically like having gaming tokens on the table, except they're not really there, but the models are still there and the terrain is still there, and then again, like I said, for people who don't even want to do any of that kind of craft stuff but still want the sort of not real tactile, but the more spatial kind of thing. They don't want to be playing a video game. They want to be, across from somebody at a table, but they're both looking through goggles or through glasses or whatever, and they're seeing a battlefield that's not actually there, and they're seeing flyers and all that kind of stuff, and they're still being turn-based. I don't know. It's a very good, interesting question. And I'm wondering. That's a very good question. I don't know. I don't feel like it'll go away in 50 years, but maybe. I mean, at the very least, I suppose there'll still be people who love to paint, and just like to do that kind of stuff. I don't know. I mean, if you sit down and think about it, 50 years previous, and look at today, look at the size of the tournaments and the conventions and all that kind of stuff. It's gotten bigger as everything else has, as video games have, and as other types of games have also gotten bigger. So I don't know. That's a very good question, though. Let's see here. Terracotta 9 says, if robots don't take over by then, I'll still be playing. Well, that's good to hear. Adrian Radcliffe says, I can't see tabletop gaming going anywhere. If anything, I'm drawn to it more now than 15 years ago, as it's one of the few hobbies left without any computer screens required. Now, here's the deal, though, is that, and I say sometimes the same type of stuff, but you also have to understand that we are getting older, the people who are saying this, as you know what I mean, as this goes on. So you might say, well, I like tabletop gaming more now than I did when I was younger. Well, that may be true, and there may be good reasons for that, because the models are better and the paints are better and it's just more fun, or the rule sets are better. But there's also that we're getting older, and so some of us have a tendency to maybe move a little bit away from the computer screen stuff, whereas other people move more toward it as they get older, because they can't paint anymore because the hands move too much, or it's just very difficult to see very close. I think it'll be very interesting, in another 20 to 30 years, when people my age are in homes, nursing homes or whatever, to be seeing how many of them are going to be just sitting there all day playing video games, because you got nothing else to do. You don't have any. You don't have to do laundry and go do things and whatever, but you can sit there and play, Skyrim, which has been released on Tri-D holo display for the 18th time or whatever, and be sitting there playing that, and I think about the LAN parties. I mean, there would have to be nap time, but think about the LAN parties. That'd be kind of fun. It'll be interesting to see. It very much will be. VJ Morph says, have to say I'd love to see a computer version of Shadespire, as I struggle to find opponents. Yeah, that's I could see that. If you're struggling to find opponents, there's an app you could use that could help you to maybe find other opponents in your area and then play them. It's called Gameforce. So if you just, I've mentioned it earlier. Yes. Anyway, I'm trying really hard not to talk about the app too much, but we're very excited about it, and really interested in getting more and more people to start using it. So I bring it up. Arturo says, just reading the rules for sell swords, which I'm having a hard time saying, and spell slingers. Sell swords and spell slingers. That's who sells seashells on the seashore. Anyway, the latest offering from Andreas Figoli, creator of Song of Blades and Heroes. It looks very interesting. Yeah, I've been hearing about it. I love Song of Blades and Heroes. I really like most stuff that Andrea does. I think he's a good guy. We're friends on Facebook, I think. And he has rabbits. He lives in Italy and has rabbits and a cat. Anyway, yeah. So I've been meaning to take a look at that new spell slingers and sell swords and spell slingers, and check that out. Yeah, I like the fact that as an indie he's able to do these things and produce. I mean, that's basically, this is his day job. Is he makes games that get sold as PDFs and stuff like that. And then get put out there, by different companies. Like sometimes most times he's self-publishing, but he's also working, I think, maybe with Osprey as well now on some certain things. So that's really cool. It's kind of neat. Do you spend a thought on online paint sessions, dear Uncle Adam? Do you spend a thought on doing, I think is the word there, doing online paint sessions? I know there are a bunch of people out there, other YouTubers that do that. I know that, I don't know if he does them as much anymore, but I know that Vince Venturella used to have these really long, videos that he would do that were basically like a live show like this. And it would be sometimes 6-7 hours, and he'd be working and painting and just kind of talking. My For me, the problem is that when I'm painting or hobbying really in any way, I generally need to have audio going. Like I need to be listening to a podcast or I need to be listening to an audiobook or something. So then I wouldn't be talking to you guys. Like there probably would be stuff going by in the chat and whatever, and you just like see the top of my head as I was like scraping Mould Lines or whatever. And I don't think that's good. That's not good broadcasting in my mind. I know that Vince can like talk to people while he's doing things and answer questions, I think, to some degree and whatever, and that's cool. I don't know that my workflow doesn't work that way. So yeah, I don't think I would do that. I have kicked around the idea of trying to just like I don't know, there's plenty of groups out there too that will just like use Discord or some other type of chat, like vocal chat software, and just sit and talk to each other while painting, while building, while whatever. I can't, like I said, I just need to be listening to something and just sort of dial out. I have a hard time like sitting with friends and working on projects. I can do it building. Like I will sometimes go down to the local shop if a bunch of people are going to go down there and we'll sit and talk and build. I don't get much done because I'm talking more. This whole show here, originally the plan here was that I was going to be working on projects while answering questions and talking. And if you go way back to the beginning, the first one I did was about the plague rats, the whatever those guys, they're Skaven, but they're Nurgle. You know what I'm talking about? I started working on trying to build those while doing this, and I had the 2 cameras going, and I got nothing done because I was answering questions, which is why this show is now basically about me talking and answering questions, which I think works a lot better, at least for me, because I can't, like I said, I have to be very focused to build and to do these things and to paint. So, yeah, like an online session for that, for me at least, isn't going to work. I am glad and also hopeful that you all over there are currently building and doing all that kind of stuff and painting and whatever, and hopefully just listening. Maybe you look up once in a while and see me and I'm waving like this, but otherwise it's generally just listening to me answer quick questions from people in here and the thing. So that's what I'm looking for. Joel Stark says the Underworld subreddit had a Discord for playing against opponents of Shadespire via the internet. Yeah, see, that's kind of the interesting thing, too, is that you could kind of do that with this. You could kind of do, play online. Because, how, like, chess has got this sort of thing where you can be like, oh, knights to kings 4 or whatever. You see it in movies all the time and stuff. And, you could almost do something kind of like that. You may need some webcam stuff going on so you can see like where your opponent's putting their pieces so that you can put them on the same piece, especially if you're using the same, if you guys are just using the base for Shadespire, you have your opponent's pieces, you know what I mean? And then they can show you the cards when they play them and stuff like that. You don't need to have their cards, but you need to have your cards. And yeah, I could see that working. Like an online thing for Shadespire could be a hoot. The Noob Painter says you should go into marketing with how smooth that plug was. Yes, you're not wrong. I am nothing if not smooth, that's for certain. Joel Stark, how do they manage dice rolls? Yeah, again, like I would think you would need to have some webcam going on just so that you'd be like, oh, look, I hit you again. Really? Yeah. You haven't ever missed. No, I know. It's amazing. My dice are on fire. You would want to be able to see some dice. So, yeah. Pretty sure the next step will be the new core box in the Warhammer Underworld system. Shadespire is just one setting, I believe. Yeah. We talked about that a little bit earlier. There's a possibility of that. What I'm interested in finding out, and again, I kind of mentioned this earlier too, I'm very interested to see what Games Workshop's going to release, if anything, at Gamma, and what they're going to release, if anything, at, and again, release the news of, not the actual game, but release at Adepticon. Last year at Gamma, like I said, they said, oh, hey, look, this is what we're doing. It's Shadow Armageddon. And then at Adepticon on Wednesday night. So Adepticon is technically Thursday through Sunday, but the last couple of years, especially last year, Games Workshop had a special Wednesday night thing. It was like a get-together or whatever, a seminar or presentation, and that's where they announced Shadespire. Then afterwards, people could actually sit down and get demos in Shadespire, and this was 6 months before it came out. So that was really cool, and they've never done stuff like that before. Now, the question is, are they going to do it again this year, or Are they just going to talk about something like maybe new expansions for stuff? Or, because I don't think they want to get into the situation where they have to come up with a new thing at every Adepticon, like a big, huge, like Apple used to always have that deal when they would do their keynotes. We'd all be waiting toward the end for them to go, oh, and one more thing. And then they announced like some new amazing thing that nobody had heard of. And it was this whole deal and everything. And it was super exciting. Nowadays, they're just kind of like, we're all waiting, and then they don't do it at the end because they can't release something amazing every time that they have a talk. And I think that's the same with Games Workshop. So whether they're going to follow that pattern or not, I don't know. It's going to be kind of interesting. And again, like I said, also with Gamma. At Gamma, they announced Shadow Warmageddon. I don't know if they're going to try to announce anything like that again. Maybe they'll make an actual real formal announcement finally for that Blood Bowl Blitz. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the only reason that people found out about Blood Bowl Blitz really was just because they were kind of showing it off in the booth at the New York Toy Fair. But I don't think, I could be wrong. I haven't been keeping super close track of the Warhammer Community website, but I don't think I've seen it mentioned on Warhammer Community. If it's been mentioned, let me know, but I don't think so. So, yeah, I don't know. What else have we got here? David Turner says web-based dice. You could do that, I suppose, for something like Shadespire. Snoogan says, I just finished base coating an Orc warbike while watching you now, so perhaps you could take some credit there and consider it some work done from your side, somehow indirectly. Okay, sure, I'll take credit for that. You're welcome. Let's see here. What else? Siri asks, Adam, have you watched Stranger Things? Yes, my wife and I. We don't watch a lot of television, frankly, but we have watched both seasons of Stranger Things. We just got done with. It's also on Netflix. What the heck was it? Altered Carbon. Yes, we watched that too. It was okay. In my mind, it was basically kind of a little bit higher budget sci-fi channel TV show, but with a lot of boobs. So, I don't know. We'll see how the next season goes. Maybe, I don't know if the next season will be the same people or if they'll change the story a lot and take place someplace else or whatever. It'll be interesting to see. So, people are talking about different ways to play online, like Tabletop Simulator and Vassal. Yeah, I know a lot of people play Vassal for... Oh, yeah, someone mentioned it. Malifaux and X-Wing. Yeah. I know people who use Vassal for both of those. I mean, not usually the same people. Some people use it for X-Wing. Some people use it for Vassal. Or for Malifaux. I think it'd be really weird if you were playing both those games at the same time. You had like a Y-Wing going up against like Von Schill. I don't think that would work. Alex asks, have you seen the new Kickstarter from Night Models? It's a Harry Potter-based miniatures game, goes live. I saw a picture of some Harry Potter's miniatures. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, obviously people like Harry Potter. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, it's not my thing particularly. So, yeah. What else have we got here? DJ the Lucky One says, hoping GW's mentions Adeptus Titanicus. I would kind of almost think that at some point this year they're going to have to show that off because there's been so much talk. I mean, you've seen images, I think, already at Forge World Day or whatever they call that thing, or Warhammer World, or one of those things. There's been images already of some of the stuff for this Adeptus Titanicus. For those of you who don't know, Adeptus Titanicus is a new game that's a specialist games game, kind of like Blood Bowl or Necromunda. Those were originally specialist games, which was kind of a different division of Games Workshop. That's one of those new ones that they're going to be releasing, hopefully, at some point. I mean, I'm not super into it, but I know a lot of people are. It used to be, I mean, there was an Adeptus Titanicus boxed game, I believe, but there was also a game called Epic. So here's the deal. So if you're playing regular 40k, a Titan in that game, not a Knight, an Imperial Knight. Imperial Knights are about yay tall. So I don't know, like 8 inches maybe tops. A Titan would be 2 feet tall, roughly, at 28 millimeter size scale. In Adeptus Titanicus, Titans are about maybe 3 or 4 inches tall. So everything is shrunk down so that you can have a huge battle going on and all that kind of stuff or whatever. And it's kind of its own thing. Anyway, They're allegedly releasing that at some point. I know they're working on it, so maybe at Gamma they'll be like, "Hey, look," and then start showing a bunch of pictures and talk about when they're going to start selling it, or maybe they'll do it at Adepticon. Hard to say. I don't personally know that it's going to have a lot of legs. If anything, maybe they'll announce it at Gamma, kind of like they did with Shadow War, and maybe they'll give it roughly the Shadow War treatment, which means they'll release it and then never talk about it again. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's just because I know a lot of people. I mean, some people are like, yes, I totally want that. I know that a lot of people also who are like, no, I don't want to, because I mean, it's a completely different scale, so you can't use any of your old terrain. It's a very different game. It's just not. I never played it. I watched it played at conventions once in a great while. I know a lot of people. It did not sell as well as a lot of the other games. That was kind of the point of specialist games, is they were much more niche. So yeah, I don't know if they'll put a ton of work into it. I get the feeling they'll make like a box set and then go, here you go, and then that'll be pretty much it. I don't know that they'll make a lot of add-ons. I don't know that they'll give it the Necromunda treatment. Like I said, I think they'll give it more of the Shadow War treatment. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah. Ash says, I really liked Altered Carbon. I liked the updated Blade Runner-like universe. I mean, it was kind of Shadowrun-like. You know, I dig that. I mean, I want to see more sci-fi stuff. And by sci-fi, I mean actual science fiction stuff on television as opposed to the Sci-Fi Channel, which is kind of a whole different thing. But yeah, it didn't... It's Blade Runner-ish, but it's not. It's certainly not Blade Runner. Which, remember, I need to watch the new one again. We saw it in the theater, and now I have it on Blu-ray. We just haven't watched it yet on Blu-ray since we got it. Let me see here. Standard Left says, have you tried Saga 2 yet? Technically, I haven't tried Saga 1 yet. I've watched it played at Adepticon. I have had it explained to me to some degree. I might have even watched a bat rap once. I can't remember. I know some people who play it, but they don't live anywhere. I mean, it's not that they don't live nearby. They just don't live real nearby. There are people up in kind of the Wausau area of Wisconsin, which is about an hour and a half, maybe a little bit more drive away, that are playing it more. And so, but there's nobody like kind of real close to where I live who plays. So it hasn't been something that I've thought a ton about, but I do know that they did release the second edition or whatever, and so I would like to. I mean, honestly, I would love to get just a very simple, even if it was just a simple kind of high-level demo at Adepticon. That'd be cool. There's a guy that I know. His name is Joe Rogers. Goes by Raj, and he has a channel called Wisco Tabletop. And so it's Wisco, Wisco Tabletop. I think it's 2 words. Anyway, he talks a lot about Saga on his channel, and he's a friend of mine. And so if you're interested in Saga, I would definitely check out Wisco Tabletop's YouTube channel. But I know he runs stuff usually at Adepticon. I know there's a big tournament there for Saga, so I'd like to see if I could find it. I'd like get into a Saga, not a tournament, a demo is what I'd like to do. What I'd love to do is have him. I got to talk to him about coming to TMX and then running some Saga there. That'd be kind of cool. He does amazing, like his terrain and stuff is all crazy astounding, and his paint jobs are also very, very good. He also plays Infinity as well. He's big into Infinity and Saga. Those are his 2 big things. So yeah, that reminds me. I got to talk to Raj specifically. I got to talk to him at Adepticon about that stuff. Bronson asks, Adam, do you play Blood Bowl? I just finished painting up a 3rd team for a league I'm trying to start. My friends like games and beer, not big in painting. We, again, are also thinking about doing that at work. I have a Skaven team built, textured, and primed. Primed like dark brown because they're Skaven. And so, yeah, I do. I need to finish them. They're on my painting table. And then... one of the other guys at work has an orc team that is finished, just needs the little numbers, little decals. And I think on my Skaven, I'm not going to use the decals. I think I'm just going to try to hand paint the numbers on because they're Skaven. They're not super attention to detail. They themselves personally as a race. So like I think the numbers will be a lot of straight lines. Like a 12 will be like this, and then almost like a that kind of stuff. I mean, to be fair, orcs would be roughly the same way, but I think he's going to put the actual water slide transfers on for all the numbers on the guys. That's the one thing that I kind of don't like about about Blood Bowl is the kind of the need for those little water slide transfers so you can tell who's who. I wish there was some other way, that you could do that, whether it was like little plastic numbers that you could, like raised numbers that you could just sort of glue to them somehow, or whatever. I mean, I know that they can't make the numbers directly on the guys because a lot of them poses are reused. Like in a single team, you might have 2 or 3 guys who have roughly the same pose. So yeah, I don't know. But I wish there was a way to do that, because I don't have a problem with doing normal water slide transfers like on a very flat surface or a very simple surface, but on a more bumpy or rounded surface, it's hard. Caspian Clayson asks, what is Saga? Oh, yeah, sorry. Saga is a historical kind of ancients, maybe, skirmish game. You've got like Saracens and Visigoths and stuff like that, Vikings fighting against each other, and it's not like 5 or 6 or 7 models kind of skirmish, but it's generally less than, say, 30. So think kind of like bolt action size armies, but generally a little bit smaller and obviously no tanks. So yeah, it's made by, I don't remember who it's made by, but it's a historical kind of skirmishy game that's been of the games out there. It's probably getting bigger in popularity. You're starting to see more and more, a few, not a lot, but you're starting to see some companies that are coming out with historical skirmish games, because the historicals have never really ever been too much about skirmish. Historicals have always been about huge blocks of troops and all that kind of stuff, which keeps many people who would be interested in historicals away, because they're like, I don't want to buy that many models, I don't want to paint that many models, whatever. So if you can make a historical miniatures game that's, the holy grail, in my opinion, would be making a historical miniatures game that maybe only has 6-7 models per side. But you don't see a ton of that. So anyway, I've got, what have I got? I have a friend of mine painting up the Test of Honor, like samurai kind of models for me. I'm trading him some design work for his painting, and so yeah, I'll be showing you those guys. I'll show you guys that stuff when it gets done too, and that's kind of skirmish level historical, and it's sort of a new thing that you're starting to see. Saga does it. Test of Honor is a very different kind of game than Saga, but yeah, you are still seeing you're starting to see some skirmish style historical stuff. Excuse me. Llama Juice says, trying to finish up my Orkland Raiders while you're talking. See, Orkland Raiders, that's funny. If you pay attention to American football, that's funny. Yeah, I'm starting to see more people in our area that are playing it. There was not a tournament at Fire and Ice this year, but there was a tournament at Fire and Ice last year. But it's still taking a little bit longer to take off than I would have thought. So Houston Piercy says, there are third-party plastic numbers for Blood Bowl. Well, shut my mouth. I had no idea. I should look into that. I'll definitely have to do a Google search. Alex Smith says, I use laser cut brass for my decals. Well, that's very fancy. It does look like it would be easier to paint. That's a very good point. I don't have a laser cutter. I have a friend who has a laser cutter, but I know I don't think it could be cut brass. His is very his can cut paper. His can cut I think leaves. His can cut Jello. That's about as powerful as his is, I think. I was like, hey, can you cut cardstock? He's like, oh, not cardstock. No. So yeah. So just a word to the wise: if you're going to buy a used laser cutter, make sure that it's as powerful as you need, and not less powerful than you need. Alex Smith says, I use brass laser cut, I think, symbols and numbers. Sometimes those brass things are actually not laser cut, but they are acid etched is also another term, which is a different thing. It's like they put something on top of the brass, and then they might laser cut the material off the top of the brass, and then they put it in an acid bath, and the acid eats straight down in the areas where there's none of that material left. That might be, yeah. Acid etched is also a thing that you see for those types of brass letters. Randall says that Osprey has a couple of historical skirmish games. Okay, that's cool. Douglas Hooker says that Saga is historical light. Looking forward to getting version 2 at Salute, London in April. Blood Bowl is seriously such a good game for getting people into the hobby. Yeah, I would say the Blood Bowl is definitely one of those, definitely a gateway game, certainly. Johannes says, I love Infinity, but those models can be a pain to assemble. Yeah, especially a lot of the earlier ones. Infinity, all their models are metal. And it's not hard to do metal right. And I'm not saying that Infinity's not doing it right, but they are making them, at least early on, a lot of their models were very difficult to build because they had so many little fiddly parts. I generally prefer plastic over metal, but I do like metal when it's done right and it's like a solid, or maybe it's 2 pieces, maybe it's 3 pieces, you know. Maybe there's like a couple of little add-on pieces that you might have to add on, but they're not like load-bearing, like a backpack or something. You just glue that on a little bit. It doesn't have to be, like an arm, especially if it's holding like a big thing. That has to be a very good seal, because otherwise the arm will fall off or it'll catch on something in your bag or whatever, that kind of stuff. So decent metal models that aren't too many pieces are great, but like especially, and I know that they've changed some, but early on. Infinity models, they wanted those models to look like super dynamically posed plastic models, but they were all made out of metal, and I've built one, and it was a nightmare. But a lot of people like that game, and that game's getting more popular, and so I'm glad to see it. I would almost, well, I was gonna say I would almost consider playing it if it was getting into plastic models, but the game system is also not. It's just, I'm not saying it's bad. Obviously, like lots of people like it. I just don't like the way it plays. So that's part of the problem as well. I've had several demos from several different people, including Sam, and it just doesn't make sense to me in some parts. And it's just not my cup of tea. I got other stuff to play, so it's cool. I'm glad they're doing well. So, like I said, Infinity is a game, not directly like where I live, but there is, again, a growing kind of, in Wisconsin, a growing band of people who play Infinity. So that's really cool. Old Man Mike says scratched in Roman numerals for Skaven. Well, that would be kind of cool. Again, Roman numerals are not hard to do. Would Skaven know how to do Roman numerals? And are they Roman numerals when they're in Games Workshop's fantasy setting? Because there was no Rome. Deep thoughts on a Sunday morning. Kilroy V2 says it's photo etched brass, not laser cut. That's kind of what I was wondering. I mean, I think you could laser cut brass. It might be really hard to do, but, okay, well, let's see here. At least on my end, some internet issues, maybe. It looks like that's stopped, but we'll see. I'm not getting any warnings. Anyway. Thomas says, Saga is far from historical, using historical units, but that's it, as long as you're not playing some specific historical scenarios. Yeah, I think it's more, when I'm talking about historicals, I'm talking about this is using historical units, not like this is an actual thing that happened in history. Like this battle didn't necessarily occur, but we're still using, like, what if, but, these kind of historical units were fighting against these historical units and whatever. I think that's what we're talking about. VJ Morph likes the fact that my friend's laser cutter can technically cut Jello. I mean, if it's like not finger Jello, like that stuff's kind of tough. But like regular Jello that you couldn't necessarily pick up without a spoon, yeah, it can cut that. 12 Neef. Get any of this, oh, that's not me actually that he's talking to. Sorry, I'm talking to a different Adam. The get starting boxes should be fine. For Skaven, they are pretty weak, so you need some Storm Vermin or for some range. If people need to get in close, you will die quickly. Pestilence, Clan Pestilence is the box set that I think is really cool for Skaven. Like if you're into the Nurgle shenanigans, I think that's a great box. Bronson Lobato says, Adam's vid where he talked about the type of gamers inspired me to try to be a hobby hero and get more people into the beardy world of gaming. Well, good. I'm glad that it helps. I like yeah, like as you guys know, if you've been watching for a while, I'm generally more of a hobby hero than I am a game player. I like to play the games, but I don't play in tournaments and stuff like that. John B. Good says, "Are you going Steam when you play AD&D?" I think you might be talking about, am I going to stream? We don't really have any plans to do that right off the bat. So again, my day job making this app, Game 4, you should go definitely download it, tell all your friends. It's about connecting tabletop gamers. You can find it at www.iamgame4.com. IAMGAMEFOR.com. One of the reasons we're making it, besides the fact that it needs to be made, there needs to be something that can connect tabletop gamers, is that we're a very small company. There's like 6 of us, but we're all tabletop gamers. Of all kinds of different stripes. A couple of war gamers, a bunch of board game people, even some CCGs and stuff like that, and then, that kind of thing. But anyway, the 2 partners have been playing Dungeons and Dragons recently with some other friends, and it was decided recently that, well, what if we started playing once in a while during lunch, at work? So that's pretty cool. And then me, being the marketing guy, was like, well, we could, down the road a little bit, if we wanted to, we could actually start streaming that if we were interested, because we have, a YouTube channel for Game 4. We don't have anything on it yet, but we're going to be adding things. We're going to probably be doing a podcast soon. We've been talking about that because we want to do content to get people into the app and things like that. So we might, streaming, the streaming part's not the hard part. Getting a bunch of people, getting the camera stuff set up and being able to do that stuff is difficult. I have a suspicion that if we do some of that, we may not stream it live. It may be more of a situation where we output it like separately. Or, I was going to say we could just pre-record it and then stream it, though I don't know why we would. I kind of find that streaming, at least for me, is more about like being able to respond to people in the chat. The whole concept of live streaming is being able to look at it and go, oh, this person asked this question, and then me being able to answer it. I think that with a role-playing situation like that, at least for me, I know there are people out there who do stream it. I've heard of Critical Role, but I've never watched any of their stuff, and I know there's other ones as well. I don't know. I don't know how we would, like the streaming in that situation. Yeah, I don't know how the streaming would be useful because we would be like really focused on the game and not focused on the chat. So, but we may record down the road and then release that. It's just having to get like multiple cameras and all that kind of junk and try to figure that stuff out, and lighting and audio, and there's a lot of hurdles to go over in that situation, but it's something we're kicking around the idea of, certainly. There you go. Looks like others were also getting a bit of the lag, and it seems to be better now. Yeah, it's cable internet, whatever. Tanleon says you need cubic boron nitride cutters for Jello. Well, for finger Jello, yeah, definitely. Douglas Hooker says, with any historical game, you can make the miniatures as authentic as you can, spend a time on research, but I guess it's the rules that need to immerse you in the era. Yeah, as a person who doesn't really play a lot of historicals, I don't quite know. Part of it is just because it's not that I'm disinterested in history. I'm just interested, I guess, in fantastical stuff a little bit more. So, I like being able to pick what color the pants are going to be, as opposed to like, well, the troops that Napoleon had at this time, their pants were brown or whatever. That's just not my thing. So. Kelly asks, which version of 40K would you guys use to get others playing the game? Kill Team, Combat Patrol? Kill Team is not really a thing anymore, I don't think. So there were Kill Team rules for like 5th, 6th, and 7th edition. I don't know that they've released anything for 8th edition. So I don't know that being able to, if you were to use the current Kill Team rules that you can probably find online or whatever, I don't know if they would work. Combat Patrol, I don't know if they've released anything for that. That's the one downside right now, is that for 40K, everybody, like 8th edition is very well regarded, and a lot of people are really enjoying it, but they don't have a good, Kill Team / Combat Patrol small little thing to get into. So I'm not sure what would be best for that situation. Talion says, I want to repaint my old minis. Is there a way to remove old paint? Yes, there is. It's called stripping. I did a video about it quite some time ago, and it was called The Pitfalls of Stripping. So if you do a search, just search for The Pitfalls of Stripping. That video was demonetized at one point because the YouTube algorithm must have thought that I was talking about taking your clothes off during music for money, which I wasn't, strangely enough. I was talking about stripping paint. So then I was able to get it remonetized by just going through their forum and saying, hey, could you have a human look at this? And they did, and they went, oh yeah, that's fine. That's boring, so we'll let you advertise. We'll let advertisers put their stuff on there. Anyway, there's a lot of different compounds you can use that you can get like at the grocery store or at the hardware store. There's I was always a big fan of Super Clean, which is purple. Not just because it's purple, although I like purple. It was pretty powerful stuff. It was good. It worked well, but does not seem to damage plastic. And you basically just find like a old dish or a bowl or something. Not a dish, that wouldn't work. An old bowl that you're not going to use anymore for eating. And then you dump a bunch of the stuff in there, and then you put your models in there and just let them soak like overnight a couple of days, and you take it out. I would wear some gloves, or something, and then take a toothbrush and try to scrape off the paint, and that will usually work. Although you'll notice if you watch that video about the pitfalls of stripping that sometimes it doesn't. There's also Simple Green, which is some good stuff I've heard about. If you go through the comments on that video, there are hundreds of people saying, oh, use this, use this, use this. The next thing I'm going to be using soon, actually, for stripping a couple of different models it's called LA's Totally Awesome, and you can get it at dollar stores here in America, allegedly, and it's kind of bright yellow, and it's like $1 for 32 ounces. Lots of people in the video was like, oh, you should use that, so I'm going to give that a try. But yeah, basically, if they're metal models, you can strip them with lots of different stuff. And there's a lot of mention of that in the comments for that video. If it's plastic, you have to be a little bit more careful because you don't want to melt the plastic. Like technically, with metal models, you can use acetone. It's crazy super flammable, so be very careful. I would tell you not to use acetone, but if you have some and you're a fire person, and I'm saying a trained fire person, then you're probably got it all on lock. But that stuff is dangerous. That being said, it will definitely strip the paint off of your metal miniatures. Off of your plastic miniatures, it will strip the paint and all of the plastic. So then they will just disappear and turn into goop, which is probably not what you want. What else have we got? Jesse Daniel says, I think Kill Team was replaced by Shadow War overall. Sort of. I mean, Shadow War is a very different rule set. It's not very much like 8th, in my opinion. It's a lot more like Necromunda, which was kind of a little bit more like 2nd edition, I guess, from what I've been told. So, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Yeah, I like Shadow War a lot, and that's not a bad way to start, honestly, for small, because you're using small armies. Shadow War, generally, most of the armies that you can play in that game don't have any more. You can't have any more than 10 guys. There's a couple of factions, like the Orcs, I think, can have up to 20. Genestealer cults, I think, can have up to 15. But I think Grey Knights can only have 5 because they're pretty powerful. So, yeah, you're playing with fewer models, which is also a benefit. Saga might be good for you, Adam. Not a ton of minis, and when it comes to painting schemes like Dark Age, it's so open to interpretation that you could go as bold or as grungy as you like. Yeah, I would like to probably go grungy if I was going to do it, because, yeah, it's always funny when you watch movies that were supposed to happen in ancient times, and everybody's teeth are real nice, and everyone, like their stuff is clean, and I would think that would not be as much of the case generally. So I would probably go definitely grungy. What else have we got here? Different Kelly says, I think the rules are better than Test of Honor, talking about a game called Ronin from Osprey. I have not taken a look at Ronin. I should check that out. Lawrence says, Uncle Adam, I think it'd be very interesting for you to have a bat rep of Bolt Action or a World War II game. Well, I don't play Bolt Action. I have in the past played Flames of War, but I have not played since the new version came out. I don't really have a full painted army, so it's probably not going to happen anytime soon. I'm very interested in Conflict 47, which is basically bolt action but alternate history. So there's laser tanks and Nazi werewolves and junk like that, which is really, frankly, more my speed. And so that eventually may happen, but that's much further down the painting queue. I have the models, I just don't have the time. What else have we got here? Fancy Llama says, just got here. What's going on? Talking, just chatting. We got about 10 more minutes left, so you've missed a bunch, but you can go back and watch it once it goes onto the YouTube. Six Gunner 86 says, I remember stripping some old dwarf model with acetone and dwarf lost his face. Yeah, that's no good. Acetone I would definitely not use on plastic. I wouldn't even barely use it on metal. It's not going to mess with the metal, but acetone is super crazy flammable, really flammable, and so don't do it out. Don't do it indoors. At best, do it outside if you have to. Brew Geek says LA's is it totally awesome or simply awesome? I think it's totally awesome. Anyway, or maybe it is simply awesome. Well, the bottle's downstairs. Anyway, that stuff that you get at the dollar store, according to Brew Geek, is great for stripping plastic. Haven't tried it on. I think he meant to type metal, but there's just a period there. So let's just assume he's going to say metal, and not Jello. 6 Gunner 86 says, nope, read that already. Sorry, yeah, I got it backwards. What the heck happened? Did it loop? That's weird. Randall, any thoughts on the new cultist rules for Necromunda? No, I haven't seen the new cultist rules. I'll have to look that up. I mean, like Chaos Cultists? Because that'd be kind of cool if you could bring Chaos Cultists into Necromunda. They already have the models. I'll have to take a look at it. I'm assuming it's probably on the Warhammer community site. Most likely, yes. Bronson says, do you think that with Custodes and Primaris, there are starting to be an oversaturation of Imperium players? They're gorgeous models, just would like to see some more variety on the table. Well, I can tell you after going to LVO that most of the people in the tournament seems to be playing Eldar, so I don't know that necessarily that's the case. Now, that being said, are there a lot more Imperial models or Imperium models than there are anything else? Yeah, sort of. And in Age of Sigmar, there have been a lot more releases for Stormcast than there have for pretty much anything else. Yeah, that's true too. Again, like I said, I have a suspicion that it's partially because that's what Games Workshop knows sells. So that's part of the deal. Again, they are a business. They are trying to get everybody who works for them to be able to feed their families. So I don't begrudge them that. I think that they're doing it because they know that if they put out something, people have been yelling and yelling for new plastic sisters of battle sisters, whatever the heck they're called, Sisters of Battle. People have been yelling and yelling for Sisters of Battle for a long time, but I have a suspicion if they dropped just a huge bunch of plastic sisters, like a huge line, just tons, like tanks and special this and special that and whatever, I don't know that it would sell as well as some people think it would. The people who've been very vocal about wanting it would be like, yes, and they would salivate greatly and go out and buy a ton of it, possibly not having enough money for rent or whatever the deal is. I mean, they would be so happy, and I get that, but I think that there's a huge other portion of people who would be kind of like, well, I'm not gonna, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes the internet can tweak what we think is real, but sales numbers have a tendency to not lie. So, I think that they're playing the game understanding after 30 some years now or more, actually, just 30 years of just 40K. They've been doing fantasy far longer. I think that they know what they're doing as far as like what makes them money so that they can, again, as a company do these things. I feel that they're a lot different than they used to be. And we've talked about this a bunch on the show too. They're a lot more receptive. They're a lot more interested in getting that, feedback, and they're doing all that stuff. But they still sell the models for kind of a lot of money, And it's, if you think it's worth it, then you should buy it. If you don't, then I wouldn't. But I don't know. I think the reason you're not seeing a lot of weird, different kind of model sets from them is because they know that they're very limited in, like, they released the Eisenhorn recently. And Eisenhorn, I loved the Eisenhorn books. They're great. So they released this, like, special edition Eisenhorn model. and he's made out of fine cast because it would have cost a ton of money to make him one of those single character kind of sprues, the hard plastic ones that we see, because I know a lot of people aren't necessarily going to buy them. I was super excited, but I bet there's a lot of people out there who are like, Eisen who? And so, so that's why they made them out of fine cast, because being able to produce them out of fine cast costs less money to them because they don't have to make a super fancy, expensive metal injection molded mold. They can make basically rubber molds, kind of, to be able to put the stuff in there. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I think that's part of why we're seeing what we see. We see a lot of Space Marines. We see a lot of Stormcast. We see a lot of, that kind of stuff because they know that that stuff sells. Now the question is it kind of a cart before the horse thing, or a chicken and the egg? Is it sell because they make a lot of it, or does it sell because they know people want it and that's why they make more of it? That I don't know. Brew Geek says that the LA stuff works great on plastic and metal. Not sure about resin. That was a typo. Gotcha. Yeah, I haven't tried it on resin either. That's a good question. I've tried the purple stuff, super clean. I've tried that on fine cast, and it worked okay. It didn't melt anything, at least, so that's a benefit. It worked okay on taking off the paint in that situation, and I don't know if because the resin's maybe a bit more porous that it's harder to strip stuff off of it. That could be part of it too. Let me see here. Michael Eng asks, do you think then a pre-fund model for new models will work for them? So customers pre-order first and then they go into production if they pass the threshold. So you're basically talking about kind of like a Kickstarter. That's a good question. Companies have tried that before. I mean, North Star Miniatures has their own thing, which they call Nickstarter, I think, which is sort of the same type of deal. There was a company that used to be around, I don't think they are completely around in their original form anymore, called Wargames Factory, or Wargamers Factory, something like that, or Wargame Factory. Anyway, what they did was they had this page where people would post, like, hey, you guys should make some models that do this, or you guys should make some models that are like this. And then they would get upvotes, and the ones that got upvoted the most, it would kind of go a long time, and then eventually people would start, and then eventually the company would be like, all right, cool. And then they would make 3D designs of that and say, was this what we're thinking? And then back and forth with the community. And then they actually produced the models. They didn't do a ton of them. Wargames Factory did a set of zombies that were basically based off of that model. They did these guys called Shock Troops that were also based off that model, and there was a couple others in there, and then eventually they went out of business for other reasons from what I understand. But yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know that Games Workshop would do that. I don't know why. It doesn't seem to be their model. I mean, that's basically like, Mantic goes heavily into Kickstarter in these situations because, and it always does well for them. I mean, like they have. I don't think that Mantic has ever been like, hey, we're gonna put this thing out, and then a bunch of people went, meh, I don't really want to do that, and then it didn't like make its money or make its like threshold. Admittedly, sometimes their threshold is very low. Like, well, we're gonna set this at 10,000, and then they make like 1 million. But it is sort of a smart thing. Like I don't know if I'm as big a fan of big companies using Kickstarter directly. I mean, Mantic's not as big as we may all think, I think, partially. Like, we all think that they're like nearly as big as Games Workshop, and I don't think even for a minute that that's true. I think they're a lot smaller, and that's why the Kickstarter thing works well for them as a company. But I don't know that... I mean, Games Workshop would never do a Kickstarter. I would be incredibly surprised if they did. Even if they did their own thing like it, like you're talking about. I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, they did do recently a bunch of models where like they would like, hey, order this model that we used to make a long time ago, and we'll crank out some like on-demand ones for you, and then we're done. We're only doing this like once every couple of months or whatever for specific different types of models. They did some of that recently for Necromunda, where they had a bunch of the old Necromunda models that they would crank out for you if you wanted them. So they've had that a little bit, but none of them are new models. They're all older stuff that they're basically just kind of like pre-ordering and then cranking out a bunch of and then putting them back on the shelf. But it's nothing like, hey, we made this new thing and we want you to vote on it kind of thing. It's not quite like that. So yeah. Alrighty. Well, It is 11 o'clock, and I gotta go. I gotta go to the not the grocery store, the hardware store, and get some more of those bolts I was talking about, so we can finish putting together that workbench for the studio, and then you'll be able to see that soon. I appreciate everybody kind of coming in here and asking questions and talking. I've enjoyed talking about Shadespire, what's hopefully coming next, and kind of question mark. You kind of posit what might be coming, and then hopefully maybe we'll see some of that stuff at Gamma. Maybe we'll see that stuff at Adepticon. If there's going to be new news about it, I would expect one of those two places to be the places where they would talk about it, and I'll be at both of them. So, hopefully I can let you know as soon as I find out. Although I'm sure someone will beat me to it. I'm not necessarily the speediest of news sources. So anyway, there we go. That's it. Pretty much it. Again, we'll see you in 2 weeks, question mark. I'm going to be traveling a lot, so I'm going to have to check to make sure. I'm 98% sure we're good. Yes, I will be getting back from... Yeah, it'll be actually... The next show will be on the 18th, right? Yep. Next show will be on the 18th, and I will have just gotten back the previous day from Gamma. So we'll have some stuff to talk about from there, probably. Most likely, At the very least, I'll tell you how things went at the booth for Game 4, and if not, I'll tell you about that. But I'll also tell you maybe Games Workshop announced some stuff. Maybe other companies, other companies are going to be there too, besides Games Workshop, obviously. I mean, within wargaming, there's all kinds of companies that are going to be there. But yes. Anyway, all right. So have a good couple of weeks, and we'll see you at the next one on the 18th. And we'll talk about Gamma, I hope, and see how that goes. All right.